We've talked about fungus reproduction, we've talked about fungus parts, we've talked all sorts of this about the molecular interactions of fungus. But most of you guys, and I think Nicole actually said it, how will this impact me? Why should I care at all about how fungus work? And it all comes down to, we have a partnership with fungus. And it's not even like the basic partnership that you think of they break us down and then provide nutrients that we in turn will eat later. Fungus have had an enormous impact on human history, probably more than just about any other organism out there. And one of the big reasons that they were so important was because of beer. Yeast is a fungus. It's used to ferment sugar into alcohol. Now, that in itself, you guys are college students, so it's like, yay, beer. No, that's not the important part here. Beer is what allowed society to begin. It's not because we're like, now we're going to do stupid things. Let's see if it works. No, the reason is because beer was safer to drink than water. We just talked about protists and prokaryotes that live in the water. Prior to beer, our ancestors had to go out to a spring of water that had all these microorganisms living in it and drink it. Yes?
But isn't alcohol in beer, doesn't that dehydrate you?
If you have too much. It's the content level. So the question about is, doesn't beer dehydrate you? Yeah, it absolutely will at the levels that we drink it now. But what we did in the past was we fermented it and watered it down. So in a lot of areas of the world, because of that disease, beer was safer to drink than water. People would give their children watered down beer instead of water, and it kept them healthier. And you're not going to do that in the United States right now because we get water out of a hose. No, we don't even drink out of the hose anymore. We drink out of like water fountains and stuff. Because it's safer to drink than, going out to the retention pond and sticking your head in. There's a story about Henry I. Henry I of England was given an elephant by the King of France. Now, that's just an odd gift. I don't know, somebody's like, here, I got you an elephant. It is. It's a faux pas gift, right? Sidebar, my brilliant brother-in-law, his wife was pregnant, and he thought the best possible gift to give her was a puppy. Right, I know, right? She was like, I need you to be home more and with us. And he's like, I got you a puppy. Yeah, that didn't work out for them like that. Right. But the King of France won up that, and he got him an elephant. No, in England, they don't deal with elephants often. Well, the King of England wanted to protect his elephant, and he knew the Thames River was just utterly polluted. Because at the time, the way you got rid of your personal waste was you poured it into the street, and then the rain would wash it into the Thames eventually. Kind of gross. He didn't want his elephant drinking from that. So instead, there are records. We have books dealing with the records that the elephant was given 12 gallons of beer a day, so it could live without having to drink water from the Thames. It lived in the Tower of London. Do you guys know what the Tower of London is? Do you know, typically you think of it as a prison, right? Yeah, before it was a prison, it was a menagerie. There were polar bears that lived in the moat. That's where you kept all the exotic animals that the king was randomly given. So, yeah, 12 gallons of beer. So imagine, if you will, early medieval England, elephant, drunk, walking down the street because you couldn't keep an elephant chained up, stuck in the keep for long because you can't really control a drunken elephant. Moral of the story, you can't control a drunken elephant. Going around crushing things, stepping on stuff, breaking things until it fell over and slept. Here's another reason fungus is so important. It allowed us to make bread. Up until this point, we couldn't make bread. We made sort of flat, like tortilla-type breads. Not even bread. They didn't have any rise to them, and they didn't last long. They would break down very easily, and they would get you could keep them around for maybe a day or two. But bread allowed us to bake something that you could make stale and then carry with you on a long trip. This allowed for farther excursions and trade to be set up. Ergot is a fungus, and it will mess you up. It leads to psychedelic effects. It's got aflatoxins in it. Causes hallucinations. Literally, it makes you see little spots that are moving, and it makes you itch like crazy, and it increases the level of paranoia. During the early period of American history, we now have examples that show, or samples that show, that aflatoxins were present in the grain. Likely, ergot infested the grains of our early settlers, and it made them start to feel these psychedelic effects. They were tripping, and they didn't know why. It turns out because they were eating grain that was infected with a fungus. And if you look at the Salem witch trials, for instance, you'll find that they were cyclical. They happened during wet seasons. They happened during times where fungus was going to grow at a very high rate. So these people were accidentally dosing themselves with psychedelic drugs, this fungus, and then having these experiences and blaming them on other people. One of our earliest forms of pest control was fungus. Heck, you guys might see this happening. We have all sorts of natural fungal controls now, but the idea was, even in ancient Egypt, as colonial organisms like bees or bees or ants were invading the work sites, they would sprinkle a fungus on top of the ant, who would then carry it back to the colony, and it would kill the colony. Leafcutter ants are actually very specialized. You guys know what leafcutter ants do? Not trying to trick you. They cut leaves, right? So they cut leaves, and the reason they cut leaves is because they take them back into their colony. What we used to think they did that for was so they could eat the leaves. But it turns out they're carrying the leaves back to their colony, and they have a whole freaking garden of fungus. So they throw the leaves onto the fungus, and then they eat the fungus. Fungus is delicious. That being said, in the same vein, there may be a new type of fungus being carried by mites that's wiping out the bees. I mean, don't get me wrong, us spraying pesticides is also hurting the bees, but there's more and more evidence that's showing a new type of fungus that lives on a mite, that lives on the bee, is causing bees to die and causing entire colonies to collapse. If the honeybee population disappeared, our current estimates show we would have about 4 years before our food supply would be severely interrupted. And by severely interrupted, I mean we're going to have that massive famine. And there have been articles out that you've probably seen that there are bee populations, bee species that are going extinct. Luckily, right now, it's not the main ones that impact our food supply. But it's still chilling. Plants and fungus live together. They have developed mutually beneficial relationships. It's kind of neat. Because plants and fungus can interact through what are termed mycorrhizae. So you've got your hyphae, and those hyphae can interact with the roots of plants in order to expand the surface area that plants draw nutrients from. You could have endomycorrhizae or ectomycorrhizae. So let me clarify this, as if it was going to be on the exam. Mycorrhizae are going to be an association between plants and fungus, where the plant gets an expanded area to draw nutrients from, because the root system is supplemented, and the plant provides the fungus with food, with sugar. So they live together in harmony. Endomycorrhizae have the hyphae extending inside the cell wall, and they interact between the cell wall and the cell membrane. So if you've got your cell wall and you got your cell membrane, the endomycorrhizae go through the cell wall but don't go through the membrane. So they allow the cell to transport food directly to the hyphae, and the hyphae to deliver nutrients directly to the plant. That expands the reach of the plants. It extends the root system to a far greater area than it would have otherwise been able to go to. Ectomycorrhizae, on the other hand, are going to not penetrate the cell wall. So they'll be associated with the cell wall on the outside of it, but they won't go into it. And it leads to a less strong connection between the plant and the fungus, but it's still, the fungus is able to deliver nutrients and the plant's able to deliver food. So you got endomycorrhizae and ectomycorrhizae. Both are useful for extending the surface area of the plant and helping the plant get nutrients from the fungus and the plant deliver food to the fungus. Endophytes are fungus that live within the tissues of plants. They're going to provide a lot of different benefits to the plants. See, these endophytes are going to sort of grow out of the individual, in the tissues, but outside of the cells. Oftentimes, they're given, they give the plant some extra properties. Sometimes these fungus will secrete toxins. So the plant itself may not be toxic, but the fungus that lives inside the plant is, thus preventing herbivores from eating the plant. It might provide an ability for the plant to take up nutrients more efficiently. So here we've got different grasses. You've got symbiotic ones, a fungus and a plant, a fungus and a plant, and then a non-symbiotic. And you'll notice that the symbiotic ones are growing much stronger. Oftentimes, fungus are able to provide not just increased surface area, but they're able to provide the enzymes plant needs to metabolize products easier. And the final topic I want to cover today is lichens. You've probably seen lichens. You see them on the side of trees a lot. They look like those little scaly things, a little bit greenish blue. Lichens are not a fungus, nor are they a plant. They're a combination of a fungus and an algae. They're both organisms living together in symbiosis. The algae produces sugar and oxygen, while the fungus produces carbon dioxide and water. So they're able to live off of each other. It's a cycle.
Sorry, is algae and fungus or?
Algae and fungus, I'm sorry. Sorry, algae is a type of plant when you look at it in its clades now. Yeah. Sorry, it's, so this lichen is growing and it does not need any other substrate. That is, lichens can grow on rocks and they will break down the rocks. Lichens were vital to early soil building. Without a lichen, without that combination between fungus and plant, between fungus and algae, you're not going to have soil cycling. We wouldn't be able to get the nutrients out of the soil that we would need to survive. In the earliest days of the Earth, there were rocks on the surface and some living things in the water. The only way living things could exist outside of the water was to get the nutrients that they would normally have gotten in the water from the land. These lichens were originally the things that provided those nutrients. They've got a lot of important things they do now, like food sources, soil building, and air monitoring. I'll go through each of those. Lichen are food for certain organisms. They grow where most plants cannot grow. They are one of the favorite foods of reindeer. The reindeer, in order to survive the winter, scrapes away the snow, and they find the lichen growing underneath. And then they eat that. They don't eat carrots. So Christmas comes around, right? And because this is the way I roll, my kid, like everyone else, is like, we put out carrots for the reindeer and cookies for Santa, right? And I'm just like, reindeer don't like carrots. They like lichen. Let's go on a lichen hunt. So we all go outside and we go looking for lichens to leave out for the reindeer. And then my kids got to school and they realized other kids didn't do that. What do you do for Christmas? What do you leave out? Lichen? Carrots. Carrots was the answer there, apparently. Then I had to have a talk with our teachers. Lichen are soil builders. Like I said, the acid secreted by the fungus breaks down rocks. The algae fixes nitrogen. So you're taking this inorganic material and converting it to an organic soil that other crops can grow in. And finally, algae can act as an air monitor. The lichen acts as an air monitor. Lichen cannot grow when there is sulfur dioxide present, and sulfur dioxide is a major air pollutant. If you do not see lichens, the air quality is not good. You know not to be in that area because you cannot process it well. When a volcanic eruption is getting ready to happen, the lichen all dies because of the eruptions of the sulfur dioxide. So there we go. That's fungus. Super important to you. Without fungus, you can't survive. And truthfully, you wouldn't have the pizzas and stuff with fungus on them. Questions?